I think it is. Okay, welcome to another Jenkins X Office Hours. So I think it's been a lot of folks have had their head down and helping out, working away with Jenkins X3, getting it to GA. So we're going to do a couple of updates where we are, some of the things that have gone on lately around that. Any questions, as usual, just please ask, or any thoughts, if you want to contribute and share something, please do. We think we might get another demo from Vincent, which will be amazing. We'll have more around tracing the things that he's been doing in Grafana, which looks pretty cool. So hopefully you can still join. And yeah, so it's just to kick things off. We are close to a GA of Jenkins X3. I think we're just making sure that things are right, and make sure we cross all the T's and dot all the I's. James, do you want to mention some of the things that you're looking at more recently?
Yeah, just a couple of things. We always used to have a CLI reference in V2, which was a little bit easier in those days because it's one binary that had all of the CLI in it. With V3, we have lots of separate plugins for lots of different sub-CLIs. And each of those has its own release cycle and so forth. So it was slightly trickier to do a CLI reference on the website. But we've got a little bit of Go code that figured that out now. So we've got now a complete command line reference on the website. To be fair, it's easier just to type JX and then the name of the command and then --help, to be honest. But a lot of people like web UIs to browse documentation. Plus, if ever you had chatting to somebody on Slack, you can now just link to the command on the website URL, which is nice. So we've got a nice command line reference finally for V3, which is one of those kind of last minute kind of housekeeping things that we need to do before GA. One other minor change is the JX requirement schema is now the V3 GA schema. So it only updated today, so you might have to restart IntelliJ or VS Code or whatever, but you should get smart completion with the V3 JX requirements file now. Longer term, I would love to figure out how to do it for any file. We have quite a lot of files around. Let me just post the link in the chat. We've got a reference page in the docs that's got all the different files that are used in all the different parts of Jenkins X. I'll post the link in the chat. Here we go. It says we want to find the chat box. There you go. So we've got a whole bunch of different files that are used. Some are Lighthouse, some are update bot, some are settings, some are Docker files and whatnot. So there's a few files around these days. What we've tried to do with most of them is make them look and feel like custom resource definitions, even if they aren't. So they've all got the API version and version and whatnot, like CRDs do. What would be awesome is if we could figure out how to get all of these schemas into your editor. So every file smart completes, whether it's the source config or whether it's the update bot file or the triggers file or whatever. I haven't quite figured out how to do that just yet, but at least the JX requirement schema works. I've not figured out a way of doing that for arbitrary CRDs yet. But if anybody figures that out, that would be awesome. So right now, there's no IDE completion for the triggers file in Lighthouse or for update bot. It's not the end of the world, but it would be kind of nice to get them all IDE friendly and smart completion and whatnot. But that's all my updates so far, I think. Another minor update, we upgraded Helm file this morning. I think it was Adrian found an issue with Helm files with OCI chart repositories, and there was some kind of concurrency issue that if you try to deploy 3 charts all using OCI, then Helm file, when you're using OCI with Helm, it has to do like a Docker poll to load the charts. And there's some kind of concurrency issue in Helm file with OCI, which is fixed in the latest greatest Helm file. So we're now on the latest greatest Helm file. I was hoping Helm file would have had another release, by the way, before GA, so we could GA on there's been a bunch of fixes in the last 28 days or so in Helm file. The one we really, really wanted is not a major fix, but there was a fix to turn down the logging. So right now, when you do Helm file template, you get like 3 pages of output for no real reason because it's just all temporary files that are being generated. So I'm not sure we'll be able to go GA with the absolute latest Helm file. Well, we will be able to go with the latest Helm file release, but I'm not sure there's going to be a Helm file release this week, so we might not have that fixed, but it's not the end of the world. But yeah, but that's all my updates, I think.
Cool.
We've just had a long weekend in the UK, so I can't remember what happened last week, to be fair.
I think for some of the other things that happened, there was a move for all the binary
the plugins. The plugins have all moved, yeah.
Yeah, so they're all over into the Jenkins X plugins org now, and also a global suite pretty much. I mean, there's still a couple we probably haven't done yet, but a couple of repos basically renaming the default branch from master to main. So this is really making sure that we're going GA on something that we want to be having shown the commitment to the changing of the default branch for Git repos. Anybody that's going to be contributing going forward, we want that to be main. There's a couple of other things I've just thought about then, actually, James. There was also, this is really one of those almost embarrassing ones, but it's one of the biggest UX issues that we've always had, well, since the Prowl days, and then transitioned to Lighthouse, was the need for a separate bot token, which is what you always want to do. You really want Lighthouse to be running as a separate bot user, really, which is separate from your own personal users. But for the initial UX and kicking the tires of Jenkins X, it can be a little bit of a pain to then create a new account, then set up the personal access token for the next, and juggle these two. So basically, we've just made a tiny change to Lighthouse that, our recommended approach is still to have a separate bot token, just to be clear. But if people use their own personal token, then it's not going to fail. You're going to get you will get the ChatOps commands. So you'll get the experience of Jenkins X, but you don't have to jump through quite a lot of hoops to start with, which is, again, it's another one of these things. It's not, our preferred approach is definitely, production workloads would always be a separate account, but it's just one of these things that we've gone on for quite some time. It's, to improve the UX. There was also there was one this morning around, which is probably worth highlighting, but it was disabling the release by default from the changelog, the generation of a release.yaml. We want to maybe look at using a better way of doing that, maybe outside of the Helm chart afterwards, but that could cause some problems at the moment, where it wasn't at the moment. We had done through
It's a bit of background of what you're saying, because I'm not sure everybody would know. Yeah. When we first started Jenkins X, most people who start using Kubernetes, you to turn everything into a CRD, and you think custom resources are the future, and almost everything becomes a custom resource. So we started making custom resources for releases. So whenever you make a release of a new chart, we made this custom resource definition with all the metadata about the release inside it. So, what were the pull requests that were merged? Where's the CI log for the release? Where's the tag in Git? Where's the change log in GitHub, and all those kind of things? So by default, all the Helm charts in the Jenkins X ecosystem have this release custom resource inside, which is included inside your cluster when you deploy it by default. However, that only works if you've installed the Jenkins X custom resources inside that cluster. So one change we made reasonably recently was only install that CRD if the CRD is in the cluster, so that if you're in a remote production cluster that doesn't have any Jenkins X CRDs, it would just ignore the release CRD. But we're kind of thinking it's maybe better just to not default to not using the release CRD is probably safer, because it just causes confusion really with people. Sometimes don't have that CRD installed, and then you get errors and weird things happen and stuff. And probably, I mean, this is not going to hit GA, but we'll probably make the release CRD disabled by default unless you enable it. Probably longer term, a cleaner solution is checking. We always by default, when we're making a release, create a new tag, and as part of that tag, we make some changes in Git. So we change, the chart version in Git. We might change a POM XML if you're doing a Maven build, and there might be some other files we change. We might generate a JX variables file and various other things. So we might change a few files in Git as part of a tag. What we could do is create the release CRD as just YAML and include it in Git at a canonical location, so that it's tagged in Git. So we still have all that metadata, but it's in Git rather than in Kubernetes as CRD. And if we go that way, we can maybe add an annotation by default into the chart so that the URL to the blob of YAML in Git is maybe in the deployment, possibly. And what we've found since we've got the report stuff now anyways, so when we're using GitOps by default, we have all the metadata of all the releases that are in each version of each cluster. So in some ways, this release CRD isn't quite so useful anymore because we have this release report anyways. So it's, I think just disable by default feels better for GA. And then maybe we can do it all better via just GitOps and have a canonical file in Git that we refer to.
I think actually that's a good point. The other one that I'm looking at now right now is actually we used to do a Git tag and push that tag quite at the start of a pipeline, and there was some changes because we wanted to make changes to the values file, which include the version, later on in the pipeline. But so now what we do is we're just moving back to the top. They're moving the tagging to be the first thing that happens in the pipeline, so that if that fails, that's okay. The next time it runs, it'll use the next tag. But what you don't want to do is have if the tag doesn't get pushed, another pipeline could come along afterwards and then reuse the same old tag. So it's kind of like the safest thing to do is kind of at the start create a tag. If that fails, you shouldn't do, but if that fails, at least the subsequent pipeline will then get the brand new tag.
Because sometimes people get, if the pipeline fails and the pipeline has created a Helm chart and pushed it to Chart Museum, the next pipeline will fail unless you use a different version number. Which would be one of those little things that people hit now and again. If a pipeline fails after making the chart, but before completing and pushing the Git tag. So it'd be nice to get that fixed before GA. One other small thing, I'll just post it in the chat. It's not a huge big deal, but we've finally brought back the auto upgrade stuff that we had in V2 so that you can enable or disable auto upgrade in your JX requirements file. And you can specify the cron schedule of when it happens. So every hour, every minute, every day, every week, midnight on a Tuesday, whatever kind of cron expression you wish. Awesome, thanks, Hervé. And the other thing that's important that we didn't quite do before, you can now choose to enable or disable auto merging. So what basically happens is, if you enable auto upgrade, it will create a pull request on your cluster Git repository at whatever schedule you say, like every day, every night, every week, whatever. And that upgrade is the equivalent to doing JX GitOps upgrade. So it does a pull request to upgrade your charts and images and all that kind of stuff. You can choose to auto merge, which means if the pull request is created and it verifies so that everything looks good and green, then it will auto merge and then it will automatically upgrade your cluster. So what that does mean is if you enable all three things, you enable auto upgrade, you give it a schedule and you auto merge, your cluster just keeps upgrading over time and you can forget about upgrading your cluster because it just happens. So yes, I've been using that for about 4 days now and it's working awesome. So that would be a good thing. We should probably nudge people to do it by default. People might want to disable the auto merge. People might want, a bit like dependable. People sometimes want to generate a pull request, but then they want to look at them and choose when to hit merge. So if you want to choose when to hit merge, don't enable auto merge. And then you can just click merge whenever you feel like it. But once you get comfortable, just auto merge it, and then it keeps your cluster up to date, which is really nice. It saves you having to think about it and worry about it. It just upgrades your cluster. And Vincent's here, which is awesome. So we're going to get a demo today. Woohoo, hopefully. Hello, Vincent.
Yeah, hi, Vincent.
Yeah. Yes, sorry. I don't know what I thought it was 4 o'clock UTC. So yeah, okay, never mind.
Okay.
I was not ready for it, but now I am. You want to do it now?
Yeah, go for it. Over to you.
Okay, good. So where am I? Let me share my screen. No, I can't share my screen. Yes, exactly. So Okay, so quick demo first. So this is Jenkins X UI. So if I use whatever, if I'm opening whatever pipeline, there is a new button which is twice, and if I click on it, it's just going to open Grafana in the Explore view with the trace ID of the pipeline. So we can see, so we are still on Jenkins X version 2, so we still have the meta pipeline. And you have everything inside the pipeline, so all the stage and steps with the timing for each. There is some details too. So for example, we can have the author, branch, build, context, whatever, full title. We can put other things if we want to. Yeah, so basically that's it. It's pretty straightforward. So it's the logical view of the pipeline, meaning that it's just the stage and steps. So you can see, for example, there are some hole in the timeline. For example, in that stage, there is a few seconds before the first step begin, because it's a time for the all the controller and the pod to start and the container image to be pulled and so on. So that's something we can't see with this logical view because it's only the first step. The second step is to be able to visualize all the different components that are involved in creating the pipeline. So for example, Lighthouse with the Lighthouse job, Tekton and the pipeline run, task run, and the core Kubernetes with the pod scheduling and so on, so that we can have a more what to say, admin view of what's happening. So we won't see all the steps, for example, because it's just containers that are started in parallel from the point of view of Kubernetes, but we'll be able to see is being put, with container image are being pulled in the pod, if a new node is being created. So a bit similar to if you in it. Well, first to have it was the beginning of that project. Taking Kubernetes events and displaying them as a span. So kind of the same. So you have a few examples. So I've been running it locally before the demo, and we can see some example, live example. So for example, we can see stateful set controller and kubelet events, like it's pulling, creating the pod, starting the pod, and so on. That way, attaching the volume and so on. So all that kind of things that are taking time before our pipeline steps can run. Yes, that will be the second step, able to see everything like maybe it works. Use it, I've implemented it in the so basically it's finished before in storage over it and the span and everything. And I'm just adding the twice ID here in the annotation of the pipeline activity. So that is being stored in the pipeline activity CRD in Kubernetes. And also, because it's just before the pipeline activity is going to be stored in the long-term storage, it's also stored in the long-term storage. So that's pretty nice because in the JX pipeline visualizer, we can retrieve that annotation and the twice ID, and we can use it to build a link. So in our case, to Grafana, because that's a platform we are using inside Jenkins X by default, but it could be something else. So for example, if there are people using Datadog or whatever solution, because in fact the implementation is using OpenTelemetry, which is the new standard for distributed tracing. And well, not only, but at least distributed tracing is GA now. That means that we can export it to different vendors. So we can use the OpenTelemetry collector, for example, which is just a small deployment we can add in our cluster. And with that, so let me find. Okay, there are a lot of exporters in the collector. That means like there is the OpenTelemetry protocol, which we are using to export our twice, and then the collector can export that to Kafka. And maybe it's in the open. I think it's a different repository. Yeah, it's in the contrib. Exporters. Yes, so you have some for AWS, Dynatrace, Datadog, whatever, Honeycomb. Yeah, lots of different styles. So you can use that to also export. So it's not limited to what we are doing inside Jenkins with Grafana. If you already have a Datadog account set up and you use it for APM, so to see your distributed trace, you can also configure. I'm going to write a documentation on how you can configure it to publish twice to another solution. So basically that's it. So it's not available right now because I need to change a few things in the version stream to get the default configuration for Tempo. So Tempo is a Grafana component which is used to store all the twice information. So it's not enabled by for now, but I'm going to work on that. To publish a code for the build controller to be able to export the twice. And the pipeline visualizer is already running. So the latest version 1.3 is already able to link directly to the twice UI if there is one, and if there is an annotation on the pipeline activity. So yeah, that was the small demo, just one link, and you can see the twice for the pipeline.
It's a very good link, though. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really good.
So next step is to be able to visualize like the whole chain of operation between Lighthouse and all the pipeline that will be triggered, all the pods that are going to be created, and so on.
Yeah,
I think that is going to be
awesome.
cool.
Yeah, I was no, that was great, by the way. When we actually deploy things in like development clusters or remote staging or remote production clusters, we don't use Tecton by default. We use this Git operator, which creates jobs. And the great thing about the jobs is there's no footprint. You know, it's just vanilla Kubernetes. There's no need to install like Tecton and then maybe Lighthouse or webhooks and all this kind of stuff. The only downside is it's not going to work out of the box with what you just demoed. So we might need to do another publisher thingy in the Git operator, so that, because it would be really nice to have the Git operator appear as well.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
but
I've been thinking about that because we had the discussion on Slack, and yes, the way it's working now, it's just a bunch of commands in a make file, and
because it could be a pipeline.
Git,
so we could one day say, let's not use a job, let's use a Tecton pipeline. And it would be totally fine to do that, and it would be fine. It might even be easier to do that because then the step could be anything and any image stuff. The main reason we kept the Git operator was just to keep it really, really simple so that you could use it in production. And people might be scared that you could create a pipeline in production, you know. So that was the main reason, but it would be kind of nice to make it at least equivalent. Or worst case, if you're not using Tecton to do your deployment phase, we should at least be able to do the same tempo exporting so that it looks like a pipeline, even if it's a job. But yeah, it's one of those things. I've been on both sides of the fence. Should we go 100% Tecton with everything, or should we? And by the way, the Git operator could make a Tecton pipeline instead of a job. I mean, it's Git operator.
It's the bootstrapping thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just you've got this bootstrap then that you need to install Tecton to be able to run the Git operator, and it just that you can't use the Git operator to manage Tecton because it gets a bit weird now. So it's that kind of thing. So my gut says let's keep the Git operator super simple and it's just a simple job because then it works anywhere, and let's add the same tempo visualization to jobs. But I could see some people saying we want to use pipelines everywhere. I'm going to install like Tecton with Terraform or something so that it's not managed by GitOps. But it's a trial on that one. I can see both approaches are good, really. But yes, but no, awesome demo. Love it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's not easy. I've been thinking of a few ideas for the Git operator. So we can have a wrapper command that could export, generate span and export them. But it's going to be more verbose to write any command because you need to wrap it inside another one. And it may introduce more complexity and so on. Or to have like because most of the commands are JX GitOps command. So have JX GitOps doing its own wrapping things on top of every command to generate span and so on. But
yeah, that's not a bad idea. Because I was thinking, make doesn't do that kind of stuff, does it? It doesn't wrap commands for you, and so we could maybe do it in JX. So at least like all the JX commands, we could do a wrap.
I don't know. We need to play with it, but
yeah.
But I've got that in my mind. So yeah.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah, I've got a few other ideas. I was thinking about having twice for the at the pull request level 2. So you can see a pull request starting, but it won't be the same scale. It will be like a much longer scale. But I'm curious to see how it looks. Like you can see all the pipeline for the pull request and so on. But yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe it's a stupid idea, but
no, I think it's a great idea. I was just about to say the same thing. So it's maybe a stupid idea. No. It would be great if when we create a pull request, we could pass the span so that we could make, if I'm doing a release pipeline's running, and then that creates a pull request to do promotion. If you could pass the spans along, and so we could kind of chain them together. So you could look at each individual span, or you could have a macro span. I don't know what they call it in the telemetry, but like a composite span. So
yeah, it's a trace. It's a global trace.
It's a global trace. You can have a global trace with all of the pull requests along the way. That would be really awesome.
I just wondered if you could not use the Git shard as the span, because it's the thing, it's the change going all the way through, going through all the environments.
Yeah, it's linking, isn't it? It's linking a release span is linking to a pull request in a different Git repository. And we want to link those spans together so that one span in one repository is creating a pull request in a different repository, and we're trying to link them to say that the same global span kind of.
Yeah, it would be nice to have a visualization like that, and you can see the timeline and what is triggering what. It's still the same way we can see the meta pipeline triggering the other one. And
yeah, but I think that would be awesome. I don't know how to do it. Like, do we add a comment maybe on the pull request we create to pass
to link
a span ID or something? So we say that again, Tom?
Could you use something like a GitHub check for that?
Possibly.
Much more in detail, aren't they?
Yeah. I don't know.
I guess
anything that works, basically. But yeah, let us check.
But check wouldn't be agnostic, would it?
Yeah.
That's the problem.
I mean, we can always do the trick that SEN does that says if you GitHub, use GitHub checks, and if not, comments. So we could always replicate, like with Bitbucket doesn't do labels on pull requests, so we use comments on Bitbucket Cloud and Bitbucket Server. But every other Git provider does, so we use real labels everywhere else. So we could always spoof it with magic comments. But if checks could do the linking of both spans, where it comes from and where it's going, it would be awesome to be able to link everything together so that any push-based promotion or release or update board thingy, we could conceptually join the spans together, so you could look at it in Grafana. That would be.
So you can have that more global pipeline view, isn't it? And also that takes your mean time to recovery and lead time for change. You can actually track through multiple repos, tracking on through from a library right the way through to deployed artifact, for example.
I mean, I find myself manually. So, for example, today we changed GitOps, the JX GitOps repository to use a new Helm file version, and I would like to be able to know how long does it take from a pull request merging in JX GitOps for that to go into the JX CLI to then get into the version stream. So that's like 2 PRs across on 3 repos. So, but that's the global span that I care about as a user or whatever. And that's something it'd be nice to know, where's the biggest delay in that? Is it a really slow CI check on one of those or something? Is it it's probably the BDD test, to be honest, 'cause they're quite slow. But it'd be nice to know, to be able to use everything you've just shown, but to do a global span across repositories. That would be really awesome. Yeah, but awesome work. This is really exciting. I'm now going to read the checks API. So this is call finished. Look at GitHub checks to see if we could use that. Worst case is comments.
As a side note, I'd love to see what the pipeline and the tracing is compared from a V2 to a V3 one, Vincent. No, that's awesome.
For V3 to be GA before we switch.
There we go. Well done.
It's GA now. No, it's not quite. It's not quite. It's really close.
Yeah, I know, really close, like that.
We did just do a few updates just before, so we are still we're hoping for this week. Just being completely honest, we're just making sure that we don't do the last things and can't get them right. So, but mostly it's just administrative tasks, documentation.
Yeah, don't worry, I understand.
That was really fantastic, Vincent. Love it. Keep the demos coming. And for anybody else as well that has any demos they might think they want to share, or even just something they want to talk about, this is really sharing all of this and having a conversation around it is fantastic. This is what open communities are all about as well. So we can all share and help feed and learn from these. All right. So, okay, so we've had the demo. Thank you very much, Vincent. We've done some updates around hoping for GA. Anybody that is contributing at the moment, then you probably may see some disruption about the switch to the main as the default branch. Anybody that does have that, just a little tip: if you go to the repo and your fork, they'll actually tell you that the upstream repo has changed. It'll give you the commands to change and also the copy and paste to run locally on your local clone of the fork to switch you to the main branch. Just a little tip.
GitHub's pretty good at dealing with moving repos and changing default branches and stuff. They've blessed them. They've put a lot of effort into that. It's good.
It is good. It's also given us an opportunity to kind of do a bit of a spring clean, and we're archiving some repos as we go along, and moving things about. Was there any questions or comments on anything from the previous discussions or the Vincent's demo as well? Anything or any other questions people have?
Here we go. This is actually
everything vanished, Tom, didn't it today? Like what?
Yeah, what happened?
Oh, I don't know. I'm still looking into that. We've had other things, so we're doing a final push on our Jenkins X3 release because we've got all of our services migrated to Tecton pipelines, and now I'm looking at DNS because we, for some reason, have all of our interfaces like spun across multiple domains. So I'm playing with that with the Terraform at the minute, and so it's like something on that breaks, and I need to GitOps upgrade. So and I'm just dancing between about 15 things at once. But the question is more on the Terraform piece. So at the moment, you're using Apex domain and another domain, so you're always nesting it. So you have say, for example, domain.com, and then there's always an apex, so it would be jx.domain.com. And I'm wondering if that's at least within the Azure Terraform. I didn't know if that was a decision within the specific Azure Terraform or the other one, because I'd kind of like to change it. I'm changing it at the moment, but the problem is Terraform's has no if statements and has no.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a horrible language to work with. Yeah, the number, isn't it? You do the number, and if you set it to 0, it doesn't create it.
Just on that. So the GCP one, you can have an Apex domain like google.com. You can have just that. Though what you do is you do have to do the manual setup of that. Basically, the Apex one is always a manual setup. If you want to have subdomains afterwards, then you can add the subdomain option and then have GCP to manage all of that using the DNS, using Terraform. But you can absolutely have just the Apex at google.com, or you can have foo.google.com if you want. So it might be worth having a bit looking at doing a compare with the GCP one and the Azure one, just to see, because it does sound like there's a difference there.
Yeah, and the other thing that I was looking at is adding an extra domains thing, because obviously you want the root domain to have all of all hook, and you want it to have Lighthouse and all your other pieces. But then for us, we'd like the extra domains to be managed by the Terraform as well. But one of the things that I've noticed that I've sort of said I'm not even looking at it yet, was the Jenkins X requirements, because it only supports the one domain. And it'd be nice if there was some way for us to hook into that and say, oh, here's the possible extra domains that are sat around, and then you could bind up and say, oh, this interface wants to go to this domain or whatever.
Yeah.
Incidentally, a few people have chatted about wanting. They've used different ingress annotations for exposing different Nginx thingies, for like using different networks, like hook is public and some of the others might be private or whatever, and using like a different VPC or whatever. That's different to the different domains though, but you can add annotations on an ingress at a namespace level or at a cluster level, or a service level, and there is a domain per namespace as well. And you probably could change the domain per service with a bit of values.
Yes, we do it ourselves though. Probably the easiest thing to do is honestly right now is not rely on the JX generation from the domain, to generate the ingress rule. Just actually add in an ingress YAML with your domain that you want for your services, because then everything else is just going to work. External DNS is going to create the A records just as normal. But it's the only reason we're using JX requirement is to make it easy to generate that initial ingress.yaml. If you want slightly different ones, you've got the control there to create yourself a new ingress YAML.
Yeah.
Okay. So
it's a bit of a balance though. Like it's a bit of a balance, because it's what we try to do is make it so you've got the easiest config approach. Because there's a bunch of ingresses in the development cluster, and then staging and production and previews and everything, they've all got their own ingresses. But if you specifically have an ingress in mind for a specific service, like let's say hook, it's totally fine for you to make your own ingress resource for that. So it's almost like pick the thing you don't need to change and make that the default behavior. So if you want all the previews to work a certain way, and you've got lots of those, configure JX requirements for say preview environments, and if hook is totally different, use a custom ingress for that. Do you know what I mean? That you don't want to be writing a custom ingress for every preview environment, and ideally you wouldn't have to do that for every service in staging. But when it comes to the small discrete services in the development cluster, knock yourself out. So those are very fixed and well defined. If you want to use your own chat museum or hook, crack on. It's more, we don't want you to have to sit there and write an ingress YAML for every preview environment, because there could be many of them, or for every staging environment. But it's one of those balances between, does everybody write their own YAML for everything all the time, or can we automate most of them, and then you write YAML if the defaults don't work And I think Ingress is the one that it's so complicated and there's so many different requirements and use cases that I don't think we could ever say, never write an Ingress YAML. But at the same time, we don't need to always write an Ingress YAML because you'd be writing most of these YAMLs that are almost exactly the same apart from a couple of strings, and it just becomes a maintenance nightmare. But yeah.
So if I fix up the Terraform, would you like the Terraform to be mainly the Apex and the normal domain, and then I'll do an extra? Should I do an extra one for the extra domains, or should I just bundle the extra domains in with?
What would you call, when you mentioned the normal domain, what's the normal domain in there? Because what we've done in the GCP one is have the Apex domain and then subdomains. That's how we kind of.
I will tell you right now. Just give me 2 seconds to open IntelliJ.
After secrets, Ingress is probably the most complicated thing in Jenkins X, I think, really.
So it's literally called domain name and Apex domain name.
Okay. Yeah, let's try and maybe see if we can get some alignment on those and see what the AWS one's referring to it as. If we can just get all of the three of the big clouds consistent terminologies, consistent language, I think that's the most important thing.
It'd be really cool if you could literally take the TF vars and just move it to another Azure, to another Terraform module and have the exact same process.
Yeah. I'd use it for a production cluster without any Jenkins X as well. So the same Terraform for your production cluster if you wanted, with no Lighthouse or Tecton or anything.
I think this is definitely one of those. I guess we need from an open source maintaining an open source project. We want to be having more and more contributions around the different providers, but then it's almost having some kind of standard, or what standards do you need to develop again? So, i.e., if you're going to add in for Oracle or somewhere else, what does your Terraform need to look like? TFRs. Right. I think that's in having some kind of consistent experience on that all of those providers follow. Definitely is something.
Yeah, I suppose if you had almost a general availability and beta for each cloud provider, so you do GA for at least the domain and the Apex domain, and then if someone wants to do extra features like the extra domains, you can say this is in beta for Azure, and we're just trialing it. But yeah, okay, I'll update you when I'm there, but I'm still playing around with obviously the other cluster and stuff.
Good luck.
Yeah,
thanks.
I guess one good thing is with V3, we've had loads of practice deleting clusters, sometimes on purpose, and we're pretty confident of it always coming back now.
Terraform Cloud is, by the way, something we use quite heavily. And it is it's nice having that initial bootstrapping option. Terraform Cloud, just going into the UI, hit qclan, and anything kind of comes back. Sometimes you have to tinker slightly with the state file, but very, very rarely. We've got some documentation up on the website around that, but that's more Terraform specific things.
Well, while you're singing the praises of Terraform Cloud, which by the way I really like too, I had my first major failure of Terraform Cloud at the weekend. I was trying to do just another plan apply, and it was having internal errors where it couldn't write the state file to its own internal file system or whatever it's using. I thought it was my fault at first. I thought my cluster was messed up.
You sure it wasn't?
It definitely was Terraform Cloud, but it wasn't me. It was definitely Terraform Cloud, because I just kept retrying it, and eventually it worked.
Someone at Terraform is sweating right now.
It's a James Strachan.
I think I broke Terraform Cloud at the weekend.
Yeah.
I broke it, but it came back eventually. It was just down for a little while. But it is really good. I really like Terraform Cloud. It's really nice.
Definitely. Okay. Anything else? Anybody else wants to share? Anything else going on, or is everyone just waiting for the GA to get out? All right. In that case, then, should we leave it there, and we'll just hopefully there will be some announcements. Let's aim. It should be this week. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But
Definitely by the next office hours, we should have done GA. So we can have a party at the next one.
I got a question.
Go
sure.
So, James, we talked about the you're going to work up some procedures for
Vault. Yeah. I'm definitely going to do it this week. Honestly, I definitely am. I promise.
Is this is this related to the upgrade
this is on premise? How to install Vault on premise, because we've defaulted to doing Vault via Terraform, and we've never shown here's how to mimic Terraform without Terraform. For just an on-premise thing. Which is mostly just a docs thing, but yeah, I'm definitely going to do it this week, I promise. I know I've been saying I'm going to do it for a while, but hopefully the first thing we'll do as soon as we GA, which should be in the next couple of days, is going to be document how to do on-premise Vault. Because it is important. Lots of people need on-premise Vault.
Yeah.
So sorry about that, Jeff. I will get there. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
In that case, then, let's get back to it, and look forward to sharing some good news with everybody this week. And yeah, again, keep going, keep questions coming on Slack, and we're almost there. So,
another quick random update, by the way. The only Git provider that isn't passing our BDD tests, so GitHub, GitHub Enterprise, GitLab, Bitbucket Server, and Gitea are all passing the BDD tests. Bitbucket Cloud isn't, but it's really close. Like, I'm not sure we'll get it done for GA, but that's the last Git provider, like major Git provider, to go through our BDD test, which is really exciting because it would be nice to have them all, but we might not quite make it. There's only one issue as well. It's auto merging a pull request not working on Bitbucket Cloud. Sorry, James, come on.
No, I was just thinking, you just kind of made the point. I knew we were just talking about that off, but we probably need to think about, do we make as part of what the GA is? Well, we can talk about it online, but what that GA is, probably need to do the switch over for the website as well. It'd be good to try and have that almost as the default. As you know, what we over the next, you might see some disruption, I guess, is where I'm going with that. Over the next couple of days, there's going to be a slight bit of disruption contributing to anything if you forked repos, or removing organizations and a few things around. So if you have any questions, if you notice something unclear, please reach out and just ping on Slack, and hopefully any disruption should be over and done with this week.
Awesome. And most of those changes have already been done, right? I don't know if there's much.
Yeah, I think mainly the website needs to go through in a bit of a almost like a run through. Yeah. Like we could get a preview of making v3 the default, and then also we need to probably make sure that the repo name for JX CLI and anything pointing to that repo is.
Yeah.
We've if anybody that's noticed or paying attention to things, you may not notice this, but the JX the JX v2 is now on a branch on the v2 code base, and we've moved over the JX CLI code base onto the main branch for JX, because we needed to make all these, we want to standardize on using the main as default branch. And as we're going GA, that was the right time to move the JX CLI code onto the main branch for JX repo.
I updated the README, by the way, over the weekend. So if you look at the README of the old JX CLI, it tells you it's moved. Well then, and I've archived it as well. So you'll hopefully notice it's moved, but yeah.
And that's the case. If something's not clear or something's not understood, just please shout, and we'll make sure we're updating these references, updating links. And we've got.
Have you archived the old quick starts?
The old.
Oh, not yet. That's a good call. Yeah, we probably should, shouldn't we?
We've got that down.
Catches me every single time, without fail.
Yeah.
You would have think I would have learned by now. I think it's been the 4th or 5th time that I've started on one and been like, this looks really old. I've changed this.
That's a great point.
We have got that down. We should go through all the V2 repos, shouldn't we, and make sure people know this is V2 and not V3 and things. Yeah, great shout. Thanks.
And there's also some kind of infrastructure things that we're going to be doing, but that should be behind the scenes as well. But some people shouldn't notice any of those. Yeah, it's getting there. It's close.
Well, great work, guys. It's nice to hear that it's nearly reached that point.
it's been a mammoth effort from a lot of people involved. So we're just very lucky that people are so involved and engaged as well. So it's really great stuff.
Almost there. Honest.
And then it's 4. But yeah, no, joking. No, we're 4 is a while way off.
That's next week. That's next week.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, on that note, let's leave it there. And good talking to everybody. Look forward to speaking to you all soon. Take care.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Take care.
See you later, guys.